All right, so today we're going to be talking about factoring out a common binomial factor. So this is just a continuation of 8.2 that we already started on, in case you're wondering. All right, so if I look at my expression, I've got 5 times x plus 2 plus 3x times x plus 2. So there's an x plus 2 on both of them, right? So what I can do is I can actually factor out that x plus 2, and then what's left over is my 5 plus 3x, and that goes in another set of parentheses. So when you factor out a common binomial, you just take that common binomial, put it out front, and then put whatever's left in the parentheses. Pretty straightforward, hopefully. That's the answer, yeah. All right, so let me give you guys one to do on your whiteboards. So x times 3x minus 5 minus 2 times 3x minus 5. All right, looks like most of you are getting it right. We take out the 3x minus 5, and we're left with x minus 2. Now, do you have to write it in that order? No, multiplication is commutative. So if you write x minus 2 times 3x minus 5, that's correct also, okay? So whichever way you prefer is fine. All right, this is for your notes. All right, so on this one, they both have a b squared plus 1, right? So I'm going to take out the b squared plus 1. But what I notice is I have a negative 2b, but then there's nothing there. So we assume it's a 1. Very good. So then what's in my second parentheses would be negative 2b plus 1. Okay? So on your whiteboards, I've got 4x times the quantity x plus 3 minus x plus 3. Okay, so yeah, again, we assume that we've got a 1 right there, and we take out the x plus 3, and we're left with 4x minus 1. Alrighty, let's take a look at this one. Oh, not that one, though. I'll get that one out of the way for a second. Alright. Alrighty, so for this one, now, if I look at my binomials, I've got z squared minus 7 and 2z cubed plus 1. Are they the same? No. So if there's nothing in common, then it's prime. You don't have to, you can't factor it, basically. So there's no common binomial. And so that means that it's prime. It can't be factored. Okay, any questions there? Alright, so I'm going to actually have you guys do this one on your whiteboards. Alright, looks like you guys all had it. We had x plus 2 times negative 4x plus 9. And one of you switched it around to make it 9 minus 4x, and that's okay too. Alrighty, let's go on then. So now what we're going to do is we are going to factor by grouping. So the steps that you need to follow for that is first we're going to group the first two terms and the last two terms. So I'm going to look at these first two terms together, and then I'll look at the last two terms. So I'll give you guys a chance to write that down, and then I'll go on. Okay, so we're going to group the first two terms. So that means I'm not even going to look at that second half right now. I'm just going to look at the first half. And if I look and see what the greatest common factor of 6h to the fourth and negative 4h cubed, what number goes into 6 and 4? 2. And how many h's can I take out? 3 of them. So I'm essentially going to divide both of those by 2h cubed, right? And it's okay if you guys do that in your head if you're comfortable doing that. You don't have to write it down. But so how many times does 2 go into 6? 3. And do I have an h left?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And then on the second one, the h's all cancel out, and I'm left with what? Negative 2. All right, now let's take a look at the second two. And I'll ignore the first half. All right, what goes into 12 and 8? A positive 4. Okay. And then I'm left with 3h minus 2 again. So now I've got a common binomial. I can do what we just did on the last page. I can factor out that common binomial. And so I have 3h minus 2 times 2h cubed plus 4. And that would be your answer. Okay? Any questions? All right. So I'll get this guy out of the way here. Yes, Diana.
On the second part when you're doing plus 4, what is it?
Okay.
I was going to put 2, but
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Let's see if you guys can do one of these then on a whiteboard. Okay, so if we look at the first one, oops. If we look at the first two, your GCF is 5y cubed, right? Okay, so then I'm dividing both of these by 5y cubed and putting what's left in the parentheses. So the 5's cancel out here, and I just have a y left, right? And then here, this becomes 3, and those cancel out. So it's just y minus 3. Okay? And then we do the same thing here. All I can take out on those is a y, right? So I divide this by y and divide that by y. And so y squared divided by y is y. And then that cancels out, and I have another minus 3. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. And then from there, we take out the common binomial, y minus 3, and we have 5y cubed plus y in the second parentheses. Okay, so one thing that you guys might run into occasionally are opposite binomials. So what I mean by opposite binomials is like if you have 5 minus x and x minus 5, those are opposites. And so what we do is we rearrange the 5 minus x, we flip it around and multiply it by negative 1. And the reason we do that is, if you look here, if I distribute this, I get negative x plus 5, right? Which if I rearrange it, is just 5 minus x. So those two things are equal, right? Does that make sense then? Okay. So since we want to have common binomials, if we end up with opposite binomials, we have to flip one of them around and make it negative, basically, so that our binomials are the same. It'll make more sense probably once I do a problem. So. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is my grouping. So I'm going to look at those two, and then I'm going to look at those two. So 2x cubed minus 12x squared, what goes into 2 and 12? 2. And how many x's can I take out? 2 of them. So I've got 2x squared, and then I divide these both by 2x squared. And so all that's left in the first one is x, and Over here, the x squareds cancel out. 2 goes into 12 6 times. So you end up with x minus 6. Then for the second two, what goes into 18 and 3? 3, yeah. So if I take out a 3, then I'm left with 6 minus x. So see how they're the opposite of each other? I don't want that. I want them to be the same. Yes, Diana?
So then after combining the two x squared minus
After what?
three.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead of me. That's okay though. You see where I'm going, so that's good. Okay, so yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially, instead of the 6 minus x, I have negative 1 times x minus 6, because that negative 1 is what makes it flip around, okay? And so, and of course you don't, if you do this step in your head, that's okay, because then what you end up with is 2x squared times x minus 6 minus 3 times x minus 6. So yeah, what you do is you make the 3 negative, and then you can flip it around. And now I can factor out the x minus 6, since they're the same now, and I get 2x squared minus 3 for my other parentheses. You guys ready to give one of these a try? Okay. All right, so on your whiteboards, I'll have you guys try this one. So in the first step, we end up with opposites. So if I make it a negative 4, then I can flip that second one around and make it 3 minus 2x also, so that they match. Okay? Most of you were doing that, so. And then we have 3 minus 2x times 5x squared minus 4. Okay, got another one for you here. This one's a little bit tricky because it messes with your brain a little bit. Almost. Yes. All right, so if we look at them in groups, I take the 8 out of the first one, right? And when we have a negative, you guys have been like taking out a negative, right? And what happens if we do that is I end up with my opposite binomial. So I actually just wanted to take out a positive x. If I make that plus x, then I can switch this around to y minus 1. So you just make it the opposite of what it was before. And so that's why it ends up being y minus 1 times 8 plus x. Okay? The other thing you guys could have done is when you saw this, like the negative x and the plus xy, you could have also decided to just rearrange it and make it plus xy minus x and group them that way. And then you wouldn't have run into the problem at all. So you can also sometimes flip a couple of them around before you even do the factoring, and it might work out easier that way too. Okay? Alrighty. That's all I have for you today.